The Virtual Breakaway Podcast with your hosts Nick and Junior and producer Vince, bringing you elite fantasy hockey information to help you win your fantasy leagues and win at life.
Episode 70. Can you guys name a player with the number 70?
What?
Can you name an NHL player wearing the number 70?
Bordolo.
Okay. Current NHL player?
Current NHL player. It's tough.
Oscar Sundqvist. No, is that his name? St. Louis?
Yeah, you're right.
Is he still wearing 70?
I don't know. Good question. Has there been a Habs? Oh, yeah, Bordelot. Bordelot wore 70 with the Habs?
I thought it was 71.
Oh, yeah?
I
don't know.
it was
I could be
15.
wrong.
What's that guy from Florida?
Lambert?
Lomberg?
Jesper Bofquist?
No,
Bokvist?
Lomberg, I think. It's number 70.
Well, we need to work on our trivia, I guess, a little bit. How you guys doing? Shall we drop the mitts? We're about 3 seconds in here.
What a game. What a game. You know what the best part of it was? That we all got together, we watched it, and had a good time doing so. And it was just a banger of a game from start to finish.
Yeah, whoever thought it was going to be an exhibition tournament
Well, I'm
wrong.
gonna say it right away. I thought this was gonna be a glorified All-Star game. That's it. Just you have countries involved instead of picking random names out of a hat. But I stand corrected. I was wrong. This has been great.
It wasn't even the three fights at the beginning. It just to start off with it was the way US locked it down in the third period. Like if the players were just there for show and just there to give entertainment, they wouldn't have locked it down like the US did in the third period. Like Canada could have had nothing going because US literally locked it
Yeah,
down.
they clogged the neutral zone. They couldn't go in.
But that's how you know players want. That's how much you know how much it meant to players that they actually
They
brought
played
it
towards
the system. Towards
hockey.
Yeah.
You had guys like McDavid and McKinnon and Crosby having to dump the puck.
Mm-hmm.
They're playing dump and chase because they were clogging the neutral zone. There was no way through.
But the whole tournament has been
Amazing.
talent-wise. Literally, we were talking about it yesterday, but if you take a look at the players that are on these teams, you're talking about players that you own in fantasy, and all of a sudden your fantasy team is actually on your TV, right? Like I own most of the American players, not because I'm anti-Canadian, but
Yeah.
it's
Boo.
they've I own Theodore, okay, and he was out of the tournament.
Don't worry, we won't get into the booing. It's not our domain.
Exactly. But it'll be if their plan is to do Olympics and then 2 years later a World Cup, it will be very interesting on how it goes. I think the Four Nations has gone further and beyond what they thought it could have been.
4.4 million viewers, which is the highest ever hockey game televised outside of the Stanley Cup final.
So imagine
Since 2019.
So imagine if the U.S. Canada make it to the finals and face
Yeah,
off.
you might hit even bigger numbers.
Hey, and the Finland Sweden match was also pretty awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's another underrated rivalry. We'll get to it later.
Yeah.
But
What's on
very
the dossier,
quickly, had you been the coach of the Canadian team, would you have told your guys to accept those fights?
Yeah, I don't care. Have fun,
Yeah.
man. Go out.
That was the beginning.
Show
don't think
that
that
you
it
won't back
would-
down.
I think it's exactly what the U.S. wanted, and I think we gave in to them. I think they ruined. Remember, they were always talking about survive the first 10 minutes. They didn't need to survive the first 10 minutes anymore because everybody was distracted with the fights.
I think
I know you mentioned that during the game as
yeah,
well, but I just don't think that it changed anything
I
other
think
than the fact that it was fun and entertaining.
I think as much as Binting was very good on some occasions, both goals, I'm pretty sure he would want to take them back.
He
So
was still a 920 save percentage,
no, but that's what I'm saying. As good as you want,
right? He was good.
yeah, but the two goals were weak.
But we noticed like he was making a lot of saves, but we're like he scares me the way he's making these saves. Like he's
There's
not
big
he's
rebounds.
unorthodox a bit.
There's big rebounds. He slides from side to side often. You
Yeah,
know, it's a little scary. It's
yeah.
a little scary when
So,
he's in nets.
listen, tomorrow will be
Yeah.
another exciting day. Everybody's home. Well, not us in Quebec. We're not home because of family day. We're home because of the snowstorm.
Yeah, exactly.
So that's it.
Spent all day shoveling
Yeah,
today.
but all Canada is home for family day. So even tomorrow's game should get good numbers against Finland.
We should post the picture of Vince with the icicles on his eyebrows and beard. We should
Man,
post that in social media for
telling you,
tomorrow.
it was freaking nuts today. Thank God it stopped
Yeah.
snowing finally, but the
Guys, it's
roads,
like 80 centimeters in like 4 days, man.
yeah,
It's
yeah,
wild.
the roads are not that they're just not drivable.
And that's the reason we're doing it virtually today. It's simply there's finding parking would be impossible to get to the studio.
So you have to
And
tune your mic.
why do you have to ruin it? It's sound professional for once.
Make
It's
it look
studio.
make it look like we have money to rent the studio.
No, but we have money for that sign in back of Junior's head, okay?
That's right.
And these hats, which came to us free, actually from Sportera.
Yeah, well, yeah.
We'll mention our sponsor.
We need to start selling some. Let's put it that way. Store coming soon. All right. So
Yeah,
this week, guys, we have
5 weeks ago.
we have the usual odd man rush. In our rumblings, we're going to talk about players who are scheduled or projected to come back from injury right out of the Four Nations break, and what impact that could have on them or their teammates, as well as a trade bait board. So who is being projected to be on the trade block, what that means for them and their fantasy value going forward. We're going to do a quick update of our Partial Break with Fantasy Hockey podcast, Four Nations Fantasy League. And lastly, Nick is having a little bit of a dilemma with his Olympiacos team in Project Llama League. So he'll tell us about that, and we'll discuss it and see if maybe we can give him some advice. So without further ado, the huge Odd Man Rush.
Odd Man Rush.
Hit it, Nick.
If you ever want to sponsor Odd Man Rush, please feel free to reach out to us, and we will gladly put this segment as your sponsorship. You will reach a total of 5 people that listen to this podcast, but it's going to be great for you. All right, guys. So there was a few people that we could have talked about here. Like there was Haltinen, there's Misa, but we're going to talk about Chernyshov here. 23 points in 8 games played in the OHL. I know it's the O, it's high scoring, but 23 points in 8 games played. Can you talk to me, Junior, a little bit about this?
Well, we had Chernyshov ranked relatively high on our fantasy draft boards when we did the draft. So, and then he ended up falling to the perfect team, a nucleus of young guys in San Jose that's going to come up together. But we knew Chernyshov had the talent. He came from Russia, right? If I'm not mistaken. So he's fresh in the Ontario Hockey League, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
I think he just got there. So I think those are the 8 games. And he's showcasing his talent, man. And it's very impressive. It's just the OHL, like you said. But you would want him to dominate. And he's dominating. Right? So had he not been producing well, we would have all been like, oh, okay, he's a flop. So you're happy to see, if you own him, that he is dominating the Ontario Hockey League.
Absolutely. And I think that if we had our draft list, I think that we would have seen where we had him in our draft tree. I think he was inside the top 20 for my list. Yeah,
have it on
I
my
had him.
other laptop.
I have it here. 17th. He was 17th on my list. Out of well, my list is pretty big, but 17th overall in my list, and he ended up going in the second round to San Jose. So pretty big drop, but showing that he has the talent and that fantasy GMs know more than real GMs. Anyways, moving on. I'm gonna go again with you, Junior, just because you know about this much better than me, and I think you have the tweet up already. But Pavel Bure had some pretty interesting comments on the whole JT Miller Pedersen thing, and he's not necessarily blaming the players. Can you give us a little bit more insight on that?
So the exact quote for Pavel Bure regarding the Canucks drama was as follows. And a credit to the RG Media for providing this interview. If you've got a talented player who doesn't fit into the team, that's a failure of management, he said. If it gets to the point where you have to trade him, something has already gone wrong.
Yeah.
And I don't tend to disagree, honestly. I think he's onto something. Sure, we've all seen it. Talented players don't pan out. But, I mean, in Montreal especially, we know all too well, if you can't develop those players, like we had such a hard time developing players with talent
What do you mean?
that we never got to see any. So I do think that management, if you're gonna draft a player that's super skilled, then you need to make sure that you have pieces around him that will make his skills come out, not make him change the way he plays to fit your system. That's going to be a fail from the get-go.
Right, but I don't think they're talking only about the system, only about development. Because here in this particular case, it wasn't Elias Pettersson that's being traded, right? It was JT Miller that got traded. But either way, you nip this in the butt. You know that these two guys are going at it. It's people management skills. Nip it in the butt, sit them down, figure it out now, because there's no coming back from this.
The biggest mistake, not the biggest mistake, but what held them back was having that run last year in the playoffs. So they figured, hey, okay, you know what? They figured it out. They can handle it. Let's go through another year status quo. And I think thinking that way was terrible to start.
Yeah, but
I don't know how they thought it would be possible to carry that over.
You see, what Pavel Bure is saying is, it's fine, but it also depends on the situation. We don't know what the beef between Pedersen and JT Miller is. We don't know if JT Miller slept with Pedersen's wife. We don't no, but to be honest, we don't know. So
yeah, in hockey, there's a lot of stuff we don't know that happens in back doors.
Situation. Remember, Laney asked to get traded out of Columbus because of mental health issues, because there was something happening in that dressing room that was not good for his mental health. We still don't know what it is. You understand? So, yes, I agree.
I think that was more the losing culture before Waddell got there.
Apparently, it was with player, if I'm not mistaken, from what the story.
I heard the same thing about Laine, but from Winnipeg, meaning that Shafley and Wheeler were bullying him basically.
But that's what I'm saying. So as an organization, you can only do so much when it's a topic like that where it's personal. Or I'm not saying JT Miller slept with Patterson's wife. I'm just saying.
Hear it here first. TMZ producer Vince.
I'm just saying. Yes, usually they're adults. You should be able to like Nick said, sit them down and talk it out. Say, we're not asking you to be best friends. We're just asking you to coexist on the ice. But at a certain point, it also depends what the situation is. So I agree and disagree with what Bury's saying.
Everybody, you're right. Because we don't know what the extent of it is. But everybody's had coworkers that they don't necessarily like or get along with. You still have to be an adult and you're getting paid, right? So I think there's some onus on the players as well there. There's onus on the management to recognize bad situations and figure them out as well. Separate them. I don't care what you have to do. But there's many failures here. It's not just on management, I think. It's not just on the players. But it's a mixture of many things that failed and to be honest, like Vancouver management hasn't been all good in everything they do, right?
Right.
So
it's clear that somebody at some point somewhere crossed the line and there was no going back.
Yeah.
Because,
Vince,
Yeah, go ahead.
I'm going to throw the next one to you just because we've already spoken about JT Miller also last episode, so I don't want to
Go.
beat a dead horse. Tavares supposedly is negotiating a deal around $7 million for 3 years. Vince, you have a lot to say on Toronto Maple Leafs and their contracts. What do you think about this Tavares $7 million deal?
Listen, they're gonna sign Stamp. They're gonna offer Marner 14 million. So
I'm talking about Tavares.
no, but I know, but it's
He goes to Marner right away, this guy.
it's Stamkos 4 years, 8 million. It's around in the same uh, area, except I think Tavares is a bit better because Stamkos is 38 and Tavares is 34, 35, if I'm not mistaken. So 4 years, they'll bring him 239. Stamkos just started his 4 year contract and he's 38. So listen, at 7 million, it's fine, but I still think Toronto's going to be in the same problem they're in now, which is their bottom six players won't be good enough to 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 be in the playoffs, and and all that money they're putting into their forwards, they're going to be missing out on defense.
I had seen some interesting trade scenarios out there that had Noah Dobson possibly going to Toronto, and he'd be instantly their top defenseman, better than Morgan Riley, better than anything else that they have there, and young enough that he could actually grow with the team for the next so many years, right? But that's you're right. I think defense is a priority for them. I think they've gotten much better at defense this year, especially with Tanev just being a shutdown king, and that's something that they were missing. So
Yeah,
we'll see.
like I'm looking at Toronto right now for next year. They're losing Tavares 11 million, and they're losing Mitch Marner's. We'll average it to 11 million just to make it easier. So that's 22 million. 22 million that's coming off the books. And then they're losing Max Pacioretty, who's at 900,000, and Yanni Hackman, who's at 1.5. So let's say they free up $23 million. Wool already takes $3 million out of that 23 million, so they're down to 20. Marner takes 14, so now they're down to 6. Plus the cap is going up, what, 3-4 million?
The real cap?
Yeah, the real
It's going
cap.
a little bit more than that.
So
It's at 88. It's going up to 94. Is that what they did?
Yeah,
No,
it's
94,
like
95.
almost.
So they'll have 10 million. Tavares at 7 million. They'll have $3 million left. They still have to sign Nyes, Nicholas Robinson. Like there's still holes on this team, and I just think with Tavares it's a double-edged sword because you don't sign him, who's gonna put up the points he's putting up this year?
I think his value at 7 million is already a hometown discount. With the cap going up, he could have asked for more.
Yeah,
With the cap going up,
it won't,
and I
it
think
won't,
this is already a hometown
yeah.
discount.
It's
So
it's a minimum of 7 million. It won't be
the question is it going to be 3 years? Is it going to be 5
5
years?
years. Yeah.
Are they going to ask? Are they going to say, how about we give you 6, but we'll sign you till you retire at 38, 39? You know, like who knows? Because that's a negotiating tactic as well.
At 7 million, if this goes longer than 3 years, they're going to regret this contract.
Yeah,
So
but
it'll be an interesting story to follow.
all right. Next, Larry Brooks, the Rangers reporter guy that always used to get into fights with Torts, fun, says he would trade Lafreniere for Zegras. Obviously, this guy is not a GM. It's like we're talking about some useless things here, but from a fantasy perspective, would you do a Lafreniere for Zegras type trade?
From a fantasy perspective,
well, it is a fantasy podcast.
I don't know. It's a lateral move, I guess, for me. Right now, Lafreniere is pacing for 48 points and a lateral.
I don't think so.
At the current pace, at the current way they're performing this year, What's the point of trading Lafreniere for Trevor Zegras?
But,
Lafreniere has a higher pedigree.
but that's what I'm saying. It's not a lateral. I think if Rangers go get Zegras, I think it's I think Anaheim wins the trade, hands down.
Well, so let's be critical here because let's be honest. He was a first overall pick, and there's a lot that comes with that. But it's his fifth year in the league, and he's only cracked 50 points once. Might not do it again this year. At some point, we have to see some massive progression. And we thought he did that last year, and now he dipped again this year, even though the Rangers as a whole were a bit out of whack to start the year. But Lafreniere is going to run out of real estate here. He's got to start showing something. He can't always just rely on being on the line with Trocheck and Panarin and hope that works. He's going to have to make his line mates better as a number one overall pick.
I don't see him as a similar number one overall pick as generational players like Matthews or franchise type changing players like Jack Hughes, right? I look at Lafreniere a little bit more like a Slavkovsky type first overall pick, where it's a weaker draft and these big men still play a big role, and it's not always a points role, right? They bang in the corners, they win puck battles, they go in front of the net, they make others better simply by being on the ice with them. But I don't see him being a point producing player to the extent of a Jack Hughes, for example.
No.
Right?
Well,
so
I was really high on him. I thought he would be.
Yeah, but I mean that's what there's a lot of people that we miss on, right? We were talking about it yesterday too. There's so many of these guys like Ryan Merkley.
Yeah.
That we were like, wow, this guy is breaking records in the juniors on D. Attitude problems, or who cares? He'll figure it out. He'll get mature. Hasn't cracked the NHL, right? So, we traded a lot to get these guys when we were excited about them. So, but Zegras, does he excite you? Because he's flashy, yeah.
Because he's flashy. That's it.
He's flashy.
So
but
Brooks's point here was that he wanted to inject skill and talent to the Rangers lineup. He feels that that's what they needed. So that's why he proposed the trade.
Okay, so he's saying maybe they're too gritty with like guys like Kreider, JT Miller,
Cooley,
Zibanejad, Cooley, CUL, yeah, Rampe. Okay, all right, but I don't know if Zegras makes that difference. He has 15 points this year in 32 games played. Last year he played 31 games. He had 15 points. Like we're talking about under half a point per game, right?
Yeah. Well, the biggest issue there is 32 games, 31 games to start.
And he's always injured, right? The one time he had an 81 game played season, he had 66 points. Before that, 75 games played, 67 points. Again, we're not talking about somebody that's lit the world on fire, but he's very flashy. He was on the cover in NHL 25, right? So there's hype around him. I just don't think that Lafreniere is the kind of guy you get rid of for Zegras. I don't know.
How long do you wait for number one pick to pan out?
But again, it depends what you mean to pan out.
Well,
like
you're going to go from right now Lafreniere's value is not what it was when he was drafted, and like it's probably maybe
neither is Zegras's.
Right? Yeah. No, I'm just. This is just about the number one overall pick of a draft.
Okay.
How long do you go in terms of maximizing your asset? So if he's not going to be who you thought he'd be, how long can you wait until maybe making a move and saying, you know what, own the mistake and just trade him? It doesn't matter you picked him first overall.
But the question is,
if you think it's a mistake,
but
how long do you wait?
If you know he's not going to pan out, there's 31 other teams that know he's not going to pan out. To what you
no.
If the Rangers,
there's always those reclamation projects.
2 years ago,
Nick,
2 years ago, Lafreniere would have went with way more than what he would go right now.
I understand reclamation projects, but at the end of the day, look at Montreal. Kirby Doc reclamation project didn't go as well as you thought. New Hook reclamation project didn't go as well as we
We're
thought.
not talking first overall picks, Vince.
Yeah, but these guys were first round. Kirby Doc was
Kirby
third.
Doc was a third
And
overall.
if Kirby Doc was in Lafreniere's draft year, he would have been first because if the draft year was so weak in Lafreniere's draft year. So you can't you as an organization you have to say, will I accept that Lafreniere is a 60-point player? That's what you have to accept.
But he hasn't shown that he is a 60-point
No,
player.
but that's it. But that that's what you have to accept, right? So, anyways, I think at the end of the day, like Nick said, every first overall pick has a different situation, and it all depends on the situation they're in. Like the Bedards, the Salbrinis, they're different than
Also,
Lafreniere.
I'd like to mention as a throw-in on the side, um, Dauber always says that for bigger players like Lafreniere, like Slavkovsky, like some of these other guys that are big-bodied players, it usually takes them 400 games in the NHL to break out. And Lafreniere, as much as we talk about him and it feels like he's been in the league forever, has only played 350 games. So there's still time. There's no bust.
Well, Nick, by
here.
the end of the season, he's 20 games away from that 400 mark.
Okay, so next season is his breakout.
Well, we thought last year was his breakout.
No, we didn't think that. You thought
Yes, no, we all discussed it on the panel.
Yes, because he did have a good year. He had 57 points in 82 games.
I'm just saying by the end of this year and the beginning of next year, he should be showing signs of coming out of it at 400 games.
Dauber said 400 games. I'm sticking to Dauber's 400 games. You're wrong. Next. Yeah, it's my segment. What do I have?
I've been putting this bell for like the last 5 minutes.
Most impressive team in the Four Nations so far, go. Vince.
Team USA. They beat Team Canada, and they showed they can play a defensive system, a lockdown system. There, and at the end of the day, they've got the best goalie in the league. So they're I'm telling you, that third period impressed me with the USA. The way they locked it down, block shot. Like we when we were watching, we said they're playing torch style, just block shots. You can put your body in front of a puck. You put your body in front of a puck. And,
Yeah,
so,
the third period was impressive. I think their physicality was impressive. We knew they were going to be more physical than Team Canada, but they were hitting people into the boards. Every forecheck was a hard hit. Everybody was finishing their checks. They played a very good game all around.
But-
they were faster than Team Canada. Other than McDavid,
yeah.
they were faster than everybody in Team Canada.
But if Matthew Tkachuk is out for the rest of the tournament, that's a big loss.
Well, we'll talk about that later. Junior.
Yeah, it has to be US. The skill, size, physicality, system, everything. I said I don't care that they're going to be physical because at the end of the day they have to stop the speed of the Canadians with McDavid and their talent, their top tier talent. And they were both physical and clogged the neutral zone.
And
There was
faster.
and they looked faster because the Canadians didn't know how to handle that. So no, they're very, very deep and it showed. So look at that. Their fourth line, Larkin, Gensel, popping in key goals. So this has to be the USA for sure.
I'm just impressed the fact that Finland beat Sweden, and these guys are rivals, right? They always play each other very hard. But just the fact that Finland was able to beat Sweden in overtime was huge. I thought they were going to lose every single game because of the injuries they've had. So good on them. Talking about Finland, UC Saros struggles.
Hold on. The Finland Sweden. There was a double check there.
Who's touching my board? Don't touch my stuff. Finland and Sweden underrated rivalry. Is there a question there, or like who wrote this?
It's a rivalry because they're both Scandinavian countries, but I mean, I don't think Finland.
No, they
if you
hate each
watch
other.
The game. They hate,
They
each
hate
other.
each other.
They hate each
I know
other.
they hate each
It's
other.
not just Scandinavian countries.
It's
Like,
like-
they
no, no.
hate each other.
Yeah,
This is
yeah.
like
Laine and Eriksson Ek were like slashing each other like they wanted to kill each other. It's no. It's
Did you hear Linus' comment at the end? I guess we're the big brother now.
Yeah, after they won. Well, it was a very big win for them.
Huge.
I guess their goaltender had a lot to do with it.
Oh, look Look at that transition, Nick.
I put it on a silver platter for you, Nick.
UC Saros struggles to carry over. His struggles from the regular season carry over to international, right? And we're kind of seeing this with a couple of players, right? Elias Pettersson's another one. We'll talk about that after. He's going to be replaced by Lankinen.
He was replaced by Lankinen.
He was replaced, and next game, too, they already announced that Lankinen's starting against Canada. So, what do we think about UC Saros? Because every single year I find he has a good half of the year and a bad half of the year. And the bad usually comes before the good. But I traded him away because I couldn't handle this kind of volatility. My heart was palpitating every single day, so I had to get rid of him, and I traded him to you, I believe, in LPHL.
Yeah.
So
then I traded him away too.
So what do we think about Saros? Is he an elite goaltender or is he not? I don't get it.
I'm not sure. I was worried.
Either
I was
one of you.
worried for him to sustain it, so I got rid of him. I didn't think he could sustain the stats of the year before.
I think he's a solid goaltender when he plays on a solid team. That's like Hellebuck. You can put him on any team, and Hellebuck will make that team better. Saros is
So
not
different tier.
Yeah, Saros is not a goalie who will make his team better. He's a goalie who, let's say Colorado. If he's on Colorado, he'll be named for the Vezina because he has a good team in front of him and he can make the key saves and won't let the goals, silly goals go in. And now he's playing in front of a team that's like Nashville, that's having a really off year after the big off season they had. So I think that has to do a lot with it too. So,
man, we called it though, eh?
He's had like
too much
900
change.
save percentages his whole career.
Yeah, it's too much change. But
he wasn't on the big teams.
Nashville next year is going to be top 3 in the West if they keep the team together.
Sorry, you were saying, Junior?
That he's had like over 920 save percentage, over 900 save percentage throughout his career almost.
Yeah, but
and he hasn't been on great teams.
Well, no, Nashville. He's been on Nashville teams that have made the playoffs every year, Junior.
That doesn't mean they're good teams.
You make
the
playoff
teams.
He carried them to the playoffs that other year.
1 year, when he needed a contract, which he got.
That's one way to put it. All right, guys. I'm just looking for the tweet here. All right, this is another player that's been struggling. Also from a Scandinavian country there, producer Vince. And Elias Pettersson. Do we have first of all, Junior, because you have the soundboard in front of you, Walking with Elias needs to be played whenever we talk about Elias Pettersson, please.
Where was this soundbite the last 5 weeks?
That's very true. I think our producer was sleeping at the wheel.
Who wants to walk with Elias?
Elias Pettersson is struggling with Sweden. He was struggling with Vancouver. And I read this interesting tweet from @_3PD who said, "We blame JT Miller. We blame the Canucks room. We blamed his line mates. We blamed the coach. We blamed his injury. We said, give him time." Well, Pettersson, all those issues have been debunked. He's playing with the best of the best from his own country, and he is completely invisible. #Canucks. Junior, you recently had Pettersson. You recently traded him for Marchenko. Talk to me about Pettersson. Do you feel vindicated, by the way, now that you spent Pettersson for Marchenko?
I just told myself that down the line I might regret it, but I know that for this year I wasn't going to regret it. He's a little too fragile, and he does this all the time. You'll have these ridiculous, crazy productive year, and then you'll have a terrible year. You'll have 2 great years, have a terrible year. He goes up and down. I think his mental game is not strong, and I think this is just one of those years where he won't be able to get out of it as efficiently as most think. So I cut the cord with him. I was contending and I had to cut the cord. But I do think he still will pan out to be 90-point player almost on a regular basis. But yeah, he's too fragile for me. Can't keep that
Vince,
guy. A bit like what you were talking about Saros.
It
For me,
feels
it's almost the same.
it feels a bit like a Patrick Laney situation where
Fortnite.
yeah, no, not Fortnite,
Well,
but
he is a gamer.
but
The new Fortnite season came out. All of
yeah,
a sudden, both of them stopped producing.
yeah, but I think it seems like more of a Patrick Laney situation where we always thought, yes, he'll get back to his form once he finds a new location, once he finds that, and they really never get back to that form because there's just something inside their heads that needs to be addressed and that they're not addressing. And
So you're saying he's no longer gonna be a
no,
100-point player.
no, definitely not a 100 point player. No, I don't
It's
think so.
interesting. We'll come back to you on that. We'll see how it goes. I know that they have good years and bad years sometimes, right? Um, Guys, biggest blow for Team Olympiacos was losing Shea Theodore. A big blow for Canada as well, but I mean, my team in fantasy is more important. Shea Theodore injury doesn't look good. Doesn't look good. I think the early prognostication is saying March. Maybe even hold him on until playoffs and use that LTIR spot for some Vegas fuckery. Um,
Vegas style.
Vegas style. Um, Guys, Shea Theodore, he was fourth in points for defensemen overall this year before he went down. Fourth overall in points. That is absolutely insane. I didn't even know that until the broadcaster had mentioned it, I think during an RDS broadcast. Um, is this just regular old Band Aid Boyd Theodore? Or, I mean, what are we talking about here? How
No,
big of a blow is this?
it's a big blow for Vegas, but that a reason Pierangelo didn't come is because he didn't want to risk this happening to him. But it's a huge blow for Vegas. Like you said, he used 14 points in defense, so it's not something that they can just call up anybody from their AHL team and say, "Hey, do what Theodore was doing," right? And even Pierangelo at his age, he can't do what he can't sustain what Theodore was doing. So I just feel it's a big blow, and at the end of the day, it just sucks because I think it's even a contract year for Theodore this year. So it just sucks
No, he
that.
already signed.
He
Oh, he
signed
already
his
signed.
extension.
Yeah,
So
his
yeah.
extension is signed.
So I'm just hoping it's not as bad as they say it is, and hopefully he can get on back on the ice sooner than later.
Hannafin did a pretty good job last year while Theodore was out. So maybe if Hannafin gets a bigger role, he might be able to fill the gap for at least a little bit.
Yeah. Another injury. So remember when before the Four Nations started, Junior had come out and said a lot of teams are going to be very reluctant, or maybe now's the time to trade before these injuries might occur to one of your players that is actually going to the Four Nations. In retrospect, that was a very smart thing that you said. Too bad nobody listens. Um, Matthew Kachuk injured. It doesn't look like he's going to be out for the final because Team USA is making the final already. So this might just be precautionary to hold them out on the last game because it's a meaningless game for them. But it's a groin injury, and you know how these things could linger sometimes. Do we think that this is another one of those that might linger, or is it just for that one game precaution and no, don't have to worry about it? I mean, we'll find out Wednesday, I guess.
If I'm Florida, I get him on a flight back to Florida as soon as possible because there's no you don't screw around with the groin injuries. It's a groin injury can be a simple let's sit out for a week and we're back and all good, or oh let's sit out a week, try it, and oh shit I'm out for 3 months now. So
Mm.
I think a groin, hamstring, all those are just fragile muscles that you shouldn't be screwing around with. And I understand Matthew Kachuk, his whole patriotism with the U.S. and all that, but I don't know, man. I think it's also I think the U.S. already knows whether he's playing or not in the finals. I think right now they're just They're not gonna say it, but I if I'm a Florida fan, I'd be very, very worried if he plays in the finals.
I'd be worried if I was Florida because he had to go to the staff to say,
I'm
I
out.
can't,
Exactly.
I'm out. So against Team Canada in a third period of a 1-goal game. So to me, that's very worrisome. I don't know what the real deal is, but he's probably going to play through it. That's for sure. Not next game, I think, because that game is irrelevant for them. But he's going to play in the final for sure, and potentially make it worse.
So keep an eye on it, though, if you are an owner of Matthew Tkachuk, fantasy-wise. He might be day-to-day when he comes back. He might be sitting out a couple of games, so just keep an eye on his availability for you. That's the end of Odd Man Rush. Again, if you want to sponsor Odd Man Rush, feel free to give us a call. Send us an email.
That does it. What's next on the agenda? Oh, baby, we have the rumblings. So basically, what we're going to do here in rumblings is we have a few players coming back from injury or supposedly coming back from injury at the end of the week. Yes, we do have NHL games this week, ladies and gentlemen.
Saturday and Sunday.
Saturday and Sunday. So make sure to do your lineups. Keep an eye on the injury report, especially with the players coming back from the Four Nations. Maybe some teams might elect to rest them for the weekend. Let's start with the injury report, and then we'll go to the trade bait board. I'll group a couple of names together, and you guys tell me which of that group is more impactful, has a more impactful return, either on themselves or on a teammate. So let's do Hampus Lindholm, Emil Heineman. Actually, let's do Hampus Lindholm, Ryan Pollock, and Noah Dobson. This one's easy.
I mean, Dobson is the best player that you just mentioned out of all those three.
Dobson's gonna be the only fancy relevant of all those three players.
And he might not be back exactly when the Four Nations is up, because I saw that they were saying February 25th, but they're playing February 23rd. So just keep an eye on. Hopefully he gets back sooner than later.
All right. What about Nikolai Kovalenko, Emil Heineman, and Connor Zary?
Fantasy-wise, you would have to go with Connor Zary off the bat. Curiosity, you go towards Kovalenko because before he got injured, he was doing well with San Jose and his new team. And Emil Heineman, I think for the Habs, is more important than fantasy-wise because as soon as he went down, it seemed like the Habs started to struggle. So I would go Zary, Kovalenko, and I don't think Heineman is fantasy related.
Well, one thing's for sure is that Emil Heineman obviously got hit by a car. But he was going to have a 20-goal season, which in some leagues might be interesting. Middle six player, and it's only his first real season in the NHL, right? Last season he played 4 games. So as a rookie, I'm interested to see how far he will go, because he's probably going to be a middle sixer. That might be valuable for some teams out there. He has a wicked release on his shot. But he just needs to put it all together. So he only plays 11 minutes time on ice right now. So like Vince said, maybe not fantasy relevant right now, but for those dynasty leagues, deep dynasty leagues, you might want to keep an eye on him.
I'm just curious about his deployment coming back. The Canadiens have been struggling to score goals. They've been mix and matching lines. Maybe he gets an opportunity on the top 6. That could be something interesting. Okay, so let's go to the center position. Boone Jenner coming back for the Columbus Blue Jackets. Nico Hischier from the New Jersey Devils, and Josh Norris of the Ottawa Senators. What are we thinking here, boys?
Well, I just don't see Boone Jenner being fantasy relevant. He was on pace for 49 points this year. So maybe in some leagues that are very, very deep that count hits, Boone Jenner is fantasy relevant. Sure, I'll give you that. Um, but a 49-point pace, he had 35 points so far this year, 22 goals. I guess that's something, right? We just said Heineman might be interesting, but Boone Jenner's 32 years old, right? I don't know. I'm interested because Monahan's out to see what his deployment will be. Does he take over the Fantilli spot? Does he go second line? We'll see. He's more relevant, obviously, if he takes over for Fantilli.
Yeah, to me, the Josh Norris is before he got injured was doing well, but like we all know, he he's injured quite often, and even Nico Hisho. Nico Hisho was on a hot streak before he got injured with the New Jersey Devils. So I think when he comes back, he'll just fit right in with that team, especially that they're still competing for a playoff spot, just like Columbus is, and who's the other team that we just mentioned? And Ottawa. So it'll be interesting. All three players play on teams that are fighting for a play, are either in the playoff or fighting for a playoff spot.
My intrigue with Boone Jenner and the reason he's on this list is because his average time on ice in the last 3 years was 20 minutes. That's 20 minutes that he's going to have to take away from other players. And that's what worries me. That's why I feel like it's impactful, his return, because I might take away from the Cole Cylinders, which have been bailing people out, or the Ken Johnsons, or the Fantilli. So that's the deployment I'm curious to see. And obviously when Monahan comes back, that's an even bigger chunk of time. All right, moving on. We're almost done here. Let's go to Colorado. Valeri Nichushkin, or possibly Gabe Landeskog making a return here in March. What do we make? I mean, the easy answer is Nichushkin, right? But if Landeskog comes back, I don't think he'll be a bottom sixer.
No, he'll give them the depth they need. So
People are going to have to play their off wing. Because if you look at Colorado right now, on the left they have Lehkonen, Drouin, Miles Wood, Kiviranta. Okay, the last two, whatever. But you bring in Landeskog, that's a left winger. You bring in Nichushkin back, I think he could play right.
Yeah, he's dual,
left right.
He's left right, right? So Middlestat, Drouin, Nichushkin, because Nekash has been doing very well with McKinnon.
Yeah, I don't think you split that up.
So it's going to be interesting. I would love to see Landeskog back on the ice. It would be an absolute incredible story. The fact that he's been out of hockey this long to actually make a comeback would be absolutely incredible. And I think we spoke about it last podcast, or one of the last podcasts too, where they were saying that doctors were telling him, "You're never playing hockey again. There's no way you could come back from this." And he's like, "No, I'm playing." And he's been fighting to get back on the ice. So that's a cool story. I don't know how relevant he's going to be, but still fun.
All right, and in Pittsburgh should be getting two top six players returning: Brian Rust and Evgeny Malkin. Rust was on an absolute tear before getting injured. Who are we more inclined to like? Who are we more excited about here, Brian Rust or Evgeny Malkin? I don't think it's as easy an answer as some of the other ones.
I'm excited to see what Pittsburgh is gonna do. Are they gonna be sellers? Are they gonna keep this team together and try to go for another run next year? Like that's what's intriguing. Because if they're sellers, then you're selling Rust at the high peak that he is at now. You're not selling Malkin. You're not trading Malkin. Malkin doesn't want to get traded. He signed a contract to stay in Pittsburgh. He's going to stay in Pittsburgh, finish his career in Pittsburgh, just like Crosby did. But that's what intrigues me with Pittsburgh is what's Dubas's plan for next? Is it I'm going to run with this next year and make my adjustments for next year, or?
Well, no, exactly to your point, Dubas has already come out or I think it was Frank Saravalli that came out and said it. They're sellers this year. They're looking to sell everybody except Malkin and Crosby.
Exactly.
Those are the two guys that are untouchable. So the plan appears to be get younger. Trade all these guys out at the deadline, get younger as fast as possible.
Oh, Judah has his hand up.
there's another untouchable, and it's Dubas's fault again. Brian Rust has a no movement clause. So it's only if he wants to leave does he get to leave, because he can't go to the minors, can't be put on waivers to go to minors, and he can't be traded without consent.
Man, they hand these out like Skittles.
It's ridiculous.
And half of the players that are eligible to be traded all have modified no trade clauses. Ricardo Raquel, modified no trade. Michael Bunting, modified no trade. Kevin Hayes, modified no trade. Danton Heinen, modified no trade. Achiari, modified no trade. That's wild, man. Anyways. Yes, okay, so another duo from, this time we're going to go to Utah, and this is the last one. Logan Cooley and Sean Dursey are both scheduled to be back after the Four Nation. Sean Dursey looks like a slightly ahead of schedule. Who has the bigger impact?
I mean, you have to say Cooley is the bigger impact. But Sean Dursey as a top 4 defenseman on their team is still an impact, right? I think the question is a little bit oddly worded there. Logan Cooley is their number 1 center.
There's no one that's going to be more important than him than their number 1 defenseman, which is Sergachev.
Yes, but so it all depends on the context you took that, because Dursey's return has a bigger impact than Cooley's return, because whoever Schmaltz got promoted and has been Schmaltz since Cooley's been injured, and he was the same Schmaltz as when Cooley was there. Whereas Dursey now is going to enter the top 4, possibly get power play time and put pressure on a guy like Sergachev, who now might lose a little bit of production or might gain. Who knows? But I'm just saying the impact of Dursey in the lineup affects more than Cooley, because Cooley's going to be Cooley regardless.
I think you're very.
And no one came up and took Cooley's spot and was like a point per game player.
I think you're very high on Dursey and very low on Sergachev. I don't think those two guys are in the same.
Yeah, I think Sergachev has proven that he is one of the leaders of that team right now, and I don't see Dursey taking his spot or even lowering his ice time.
We'll see, but at least now there's a threat if the power play is not working to make a change. That does it for the injury report. Because I know, because I've been following it from the beginning. At the beginning of the season, they were alternating sometimes on that power play.
Yeah, I agree with you. At the beginning of the season, I agree. But no,
so
no longer.
I'm just saying they were willing to do it. Then they might be willing to do it now if they need to. All right, so let's move on to the trade bait board. I just took a few notable names here that are potentially going to be traded, and. Look, we don't know where they will be traded or if they will be traded, but what their impact, their fantasy value will be if they are. So let's start with the lone goalie on this list, John Gibson of the Anaheim Mighty Ducks. I feel like for the last 10 years, this guy's been on a trade bait board and hasn't budged. But the rumblings are that he supposedly will be traded, and there was a lot of talk of Carolina and just it never happening. What do we make of John Gibson potentially leaving Anaheim?
I think we don't know what he is anymore, because he was highly touted for such a long time, and we always said that the reason why he's not putting up the numbers is because he's in Anaheim. And Anaheim is a rebuilding team. They're not a good team. They're very weak. But the fact is now is that Gibson has been in this kind of limbo for such a long time that we just don't know anymore. And I think on 32 Thoughts, correct me if I'm wrong, Junior, they were speaking about Gibson wanting a trade to a team that will make him a number 1. He doesn't want to go into a situation where he's a 1B. He wants to be the top dog to the trade, to the competitor that he's going to.
Time to go to Buffalo.
Well, they're not competing. That's the thing.
But any team that's competing doesn't need him. That's what John Gibson doesn't understand.
Well, that's not necessarily true. Carolina did have some interest for a long time, especially when Frederick Anderson went down. What was the other team that was having some difficulties? Well, Colorado before they got
now they signed
Blackwood.
Vancouver, but Lankinen actually held his own there. So
Yeah, but there was question marks at the beginning of the season, right? So
Yeah,
there's Edmonton.
but even with Vancouver,
Edmonton is still a question mark.
but even with Vancouver, is Gibson on his last year contract? Is he a UFA after this?
I don't
Because
think so.
if he wants to be number one, even if he goes to Vancouver, there's Demko. He won't be ahead of Demko. So
Well, it all depends.
Edmonton,
what,
he might
what
be
his
ahead.
situation is because he got hurt again, didn't he? Didn't he leave the game right before Four Nations break?
I don't know.
John Gibson has 2 years left at 6.4 million after this year, so he still has 3 active years on his contract.
Yeah,
Yeah.
for him to say I want to be a number one, like he hasn't proven he could still be a number one goalie right now. So
I think his value has gone down.
yeah, exactly.
Absolutely. And I think that even if he gets traded to Edmonton, he would still be in a tandem.
Yeah, but he's making too much money to go with Edmonton. Edmonton can't afford to pay a goalie 6.6 million unless
Well,
Anaheim holds salary.
LTIR, baby.
Retention
Evander
too,
Kane.
possibly.
Yeah,
or-
but that's fine. But then at the end of the day, the year after that, Evander Kane
no,
comes
that's
back.
it.
You understand? He's still under contract. If
Yeah.
he was under contract for 1 year, yes, 100%. But he's under contract for another 3 years, and in
He's
those
not a rental.
and in those 3 years, McDavid has to resign his contract. So, and it makes no sense for Edmonton.
All right.
Seth Jones.
Not gonna get traded ever. He's signed at 9.5 million till 2029, 2030. There's nobody who's gonna take even if Chicago retains 50% of his contract, he's still not. It's too much money.
I think it's unlikely.
Yeah.
I think it's unlikely that he gets moved.
Yeah.
And his contract is a big reason for that.
Exactly.
Okay, in Buffalo, we heard their names connected to a possibly Elias Pettersson trade. Dylan Cozens and Bowen Byram.
I am starting to worry about Bowen Byram on how he's just the one who's getting thrown into every trade possible with every team that he's been with. It's just, it's worrisome. Cozen, I was the first one this year to think that he was going to have a great season because of his Team Canada World Championship that he had, and he hasn't. So I don't know. I think Buffalo really does want to trade Cozens, but once again, what's going to be the return on Cozens? He's making 7 million, 7.5.
7 million.
7 million is a lot of money for a guy who's not putting up points this year.
In retrospect, also, the Bowen Byram thing, the fact that he is only at 3.5 million is another reason why he's easily thrown into
Yeah,
trade
exactly.
negotiations, right? He could easily be absorbed and has value enough that he could be traded. But I don't think it's something that's actually like they were talking about Bowen Byram because it was talking about Elias Pettersson, not because he's just somebody that they want to get rid of.
The unfortunate part for Byram is that he was never on a team to be number one defenseman.
Yeah.
So we never really see what he can.
He went from Makar to Darlene and Powers, right?
Exactly. Okay, so Brock Nelson. Now there's talk that they're looking to extend his contract in New York with the Islanders. So it's starting to look a little more unlikely he gets traded. But in the event he does, do we like his fantasy value on another team, on a contending team?
Oh, well, if he goes to Colorado, you pick him up, my friend. I see him in Colorado. I see him as a
One
Number
of the
two.
teams listed was Toronto too.
maybe Toronto, but listen. The thing is his fantasy value is gonna go up depending on who he plays, what team he goes with. If he's not gonna play top 6 role, and he's gonna be a third liner for a team, then his fantasy relevance isn't as high.
I'm gonna go out on a limb and say that he's not getting traded, and he resigns with the Island.
Yeah,
He has come out and said that he loves playing for the Islanders, and
this is a Lou Lamoriello player.
yeah,
And let's do Ricard Raquel and Braden Shen. One is probably a staple. He's a captain of a team, so he's got different attributes that can serve different purposes on contending teams. And Ricard Raquel is having an offensive career year.
I think wherever Braden Chen goes and gets traded to, he'll be there as a third line centerman to boost the bottom six of whatever team is picking him up.
Yeah, I don't know if you saw a yawn there because don't care.
There.
Not fantasy relevant for me.
I think Braden Shank, the more important the games get, the more productive he can be. And Ricardo Raquel right now is playing on a team with no pressure. So he's got the liberty to put up some offense. When he goes on a contending team, he's going to sink. That does it for the trade bait board, guys. Look, there's a lot of content here for fantasy hockey these days in NHL. So we're doing what we can with what we have. Vince, do you want to update everybody on our Four Nations Fantasy League quickly before we move on to Nick's Dilemma?
It's not me that you have to ask. Do you guys want me to update everybody on our Four Nations Fantasy League update? Because, woohoo!
Who wrote these numbers? I want to double count. I want to recount.
You have access to the Excel sheet. You can check it anytime, my friend. So, quick for the Four Nations Fantasy League update.
These formulas look a little sketch.
Junior is in last place at 27 points. Nick is in second place at 34 points. And obviously, your producer, Vince, is in first place at 51 points. So tomorrow will be another day to see how it goes. But
it's a big day. It has to be a big day.
Yeah, exactly. Well, for me or for you guys?
For us.
Like,
I have two players who haven't played a game in the tournament yet. So
your 0D doesn't seem like it worked.
Yeah, no, 0D wasn't.
Fantasy. So yeah, so that's it. So we'll keep you posted.
But your value over replacement.
There you go. But by next week we should be announcing the winner by next week.
Oh, we have to by Wednesday.
Well, I've been updating the standings on X if anyone really cares to follow along.
So there you go. And that is done. And now, Nick, what is your dilemma?
Okay, so I'm gonna try to say this in I'm gonna try to say this in ways that listeners could actually grasp what the rules are and how I'm supposed to go about this. Okay, so
perfect. So this podcast is going into 2 hours. Go.
In Project Llama, we have a rule where if you're 28 years old and over, your contract is guaranteed. So as many years as I give the player, their contract is something that cannot be bought out. It could be buried. It could be bought out in the off season, but it's not something I could get rid of unless I trade it away. And burying is only saving about $1 million. So right now I have Shea Theodore that went down. Okay, that's $5.2 million that I have on IR. Very much like the Vegas Golden Knights. And I need to get a replacement for Shea Theodore if I want to continue staying in the position I'm in. Now, keep in mind, I'm in third place. I'm not in second place. I'm not in first. The first place guy is running away with it. And here's the problem. If Shea Theodore comes back, so I have quite a few people on IR. Barzal, Shea Theodore, Noah Dobson's coming back soon. Nishkishin is coming back soon. Dante Fabro, so on and so forth. If I sign a player like Colton Pareko, who's over the age of 28, so not easily I could get rid of this contract, for this year alone, he's at $6.5 million, and he's producing pretty decently for a defenseman, and it's very hard to find defensemen in this league. Shea Theodore would go on IR, and Pareko would come in. My issue is, if Shea Theodore comes back before the end of the year, I'm over the cap. So I'm going to have to get rid of salary, meaning I'm going to be in a bad situation with trades, or I'm going to have to put somebody on waivers like a Kirby Duck or somebody else that's under the age of 28, hoping that I could send them to the minors without anybody else in the league picking them up. So my question to you guys is it worth it for me to take the risk in the salary that I'm going to be grabbing from the waiver wire especially the fact that I'm not fighting for first, but there is money involved in second and third, but possibly losing an asset because I'm making this move now.
I think
It's a risk either way.
no, not really, because if you don't do anything and he goes in IR, you're still if
I
you
might lose third place.
yeah, but if you're fighting for first place or even second place, I would say maybe, but to lose a player who under 28 in Llama because you're gonna be over the cap, it's gonna be, that player's getting claimed no matter what because he's a player that's in your starting lineups. So basically, like, what are the options of you dropping on your team? Who are your players that are under 28 that you would have to basically send through waivers?
Um, the only options that I would have that would actually be close to that salary would be, well, Kirby Dak I already mentioned. Velarde, which I'm not moving.
You could send Cole Perfetti down on ELC.
No, but he's already up there only because I have other people on IR. Like me sending him down doesn't really help me much.
You don't have a entry level contract under $1 million.
I'm pretty much playing most of them already. I have Emil Heinemann.
Well, I mean, it's not like Perfetti is producing at a crazy rate either.
Yeah,
But he's like
but he's gonna be bringing in. You're gonna be bringing in how much? Theodore is making how much, Nick?
5.2.
5.2,
Well,
and just
he's bringing in Pareko. He wants to bring in Pareko.
Who's at 6.5.
yeah, exactly. So, but still, after that, if you drop Perfetti, you're gonna be under the cap.
No, so that's why it's convoluted, this question, right? Perfetti right now is only in my lineup because Barzal is on
Right.
IR, but Barzal is supposed to come back soon.
And if he comes
So-
back,
No, there's questions that he might be out for the year.
If he's out for the year, that's different.
you're-
Yes, I agree with you guys.
then you think it's solved. But I think
Then everything is solved.
yeah, I think for third,
Diskushin is coming back now.
yeah, I think for third place, for fighting for third place or whatnot, I just think yeah, it all depends on how high you are on the players that you're gonna be forced to drop, and are they worth a Pareco that you're gonna go pick up on waivers. So I don't know. I don't think Pareco is that fantasy relative that I. If I'm fighting for first, I do that risky move. I think there's just way too much risk in that move right now for you.
That's fair. That's fair. Junior?
If you would have told me you want to sign Pareko to more than 1 year because you want to keep him for next year, then I would have found a way to maneuver to acquire him, to sign him. But there's too much maneuvering and calculations to do, bodies moving, to try to figure it out to get a Pareko. It's not like you're saying you're going and get a 2 fantasy point defenseman. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
That would make a huge difference. And again, like you said, for what? To try to compete for second place, because first place is long gone.
First place is gone, yeah.
There's no way anybody catches up to him. So,
But you are in second place, so I'm behind you by
for
about
me,
50 points.
I'm fighting. My vision is I'm fighting to keep second. I'm not even looking at first place. But and actually, to be honest with you, and we spoke about it off air, and maybe Vince could jump in. I'm surprised nobody in Llama is already thinking of next year. We signed Lehkonen, yes, to fill a void, but we signed him to 2 years because we want him next year at $4.5 million as a winger.
No.
And why do I have to go auction and outbid everybody else and give extra years trying to get him in free agency when I could do that now at the contract I want to give? So that's why I said if you were thinking of keeping him for more than 1 year, then I would try to figure it out.
I mean, I wish I had some clarity on some of these guys, right? Barzal, you don't know if he's coming back before the end. Theodore, you don't know if he's coming back before the end. Knowing that, you can make moves.
Yeah.
Not knowing that, it's so hard to assess. But maybe next week we could surge in Team Olympiacos in Lama instead. And hockey's going to come back on Saturday. There's hockey on Saturday, Sunday. I think there's a few teams that are playing back-to-backs on top of it. I think, Vince, you mentioned that, no? For next week? That there's teams that are playing Saturday and Sunday?
Yeah, Saturday, Sunday they're playing. I think there's a lot of games. Saturday there's, I think, 14 games, if I'm not mistaken.
So fantasy hockey is coming back, boys.
Yeah. I'm guessing the people that are doing head-to-head is going to be a 2-week head-to-head, Saturday, Sunday, plus the full week of next week.
If your league is good, they thought of that, yes.
So the teams playing back-to-back are Anaheim, Chicago, Colorado, Dallas, Detroit, Edmonton, Nashville, New Jersey, New York, Pittsburgh. Holy crap, my microphone almost went flying. So basically, half the league is playing back-to-back, and the other half is just playing one game.
Yeah.
It's going to be interesting. And now we're getting into nitty-gritty, and we're getting to that kind of hockey. Playoff spots are on the line, so hockey's going to get a bit tighter, more physical, less power plays. So it's gonna be interesting. The final stretch of the fantasy league.
As I'm, do you like the break?
I don't mind it.
I'm okay with it. I'd rather this than the All-Star game. I feel the All-Star game, for me, I understand for little kids, for younger kids, it's a fun thing to experience, but I just think it's more in its time. And if we can do it every 2 years, like the All-Star game, like 2 years yes, and then 2 years no, I think it'd be fantastic.
Yeah.
We had a discussion with a listener on X today, which pretty much agreed that the All-Star game has run its course.
Yeah. Well, look at the NBA.
But, guys, honestly, when I was young, I used to look forward to the skills competition.
Exactly.
I thought it was the coolest thing in the world when I was young. So I don't mind it being every second year.
Yeah.
Right? Because you'll have the World Cup, you'll have All-Star game, then you'll have Olympics, then you'll have All-Star game, then you'll have... So that's going to be fun. I think that's good. It keeps it fresh.
Yeah, if they could innovate a little bit too, that'll be good.
Peeps,
Hockey's back, ladies and gentlemen.
follow us
NHL action.
on YouTube, like on YouTube, subscribe on YouTube, Spotify.
Put the alerts on.
Put the alerts on Spotify. Encourage us.
Follow us on X, Instagram, TikTok at Partial Break Pod.
5 stars. Guys, give us a review. Join the discussion.
We'll be much better next week, that's for sure, and a little bit more lively.
You say that every week.
Yeah.
Well, look, we weren't that lively today. I mean, all the shoveling, I think it took a lot out of us. So.
We get a snowblower. All right, have a good night, people.
Have a good week,
All right,
everybody.
guys. Take care.
Go Canada, go.